Welcome to this week's session. This week we are excited to be joined by Jason Adams, president of NI2. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
This week we're going to explore how to approach system changes, which for a lot of hospitals and any provider groups that are going through system changes or potentially looking to change systems, know that it can turn out to be a huge headache. So Jason is here to hopefully give us some good insight and some good tips on making this process hopefully a little easier. So let's jump right in, Jason. What are the biggest challenges that you see with system conversions?
I think some of the bigger challenges with conversions is around planning and time. Often organizations delay the inevitable in clearly assigning leaders and task managers and project managers for the revenue cycle until it's too late. Those organizations that are successful assign a revenue cycle project manager right from the point of knowing they're going to convert from system A to system B. Having that sole individual accountable as their full-time job to manage the project, because it is a massive undertaking to go from system A to system B, no matter what it is, and no matter what system you're on today, and no matter what system you're going to. The proper project management is probably one of the keys to success over the long term.
Do you also find that identifying the folks that need to be involved is also a challenge too? There's often somebody that's forgotten.
Absolutely. And that project manager, knowing the project plan and the roadmap and all that's involved, needs to ensure that there's accountability for each of those key swim lanes with any system conversion.
Great. What testing should happen before conversion goes live?
Far more than what organizations do today. I know there's definitely a lot of success stories out there, but there's the equal quantity of not so great stories about conversion tragedies, as I label them. From a testing perspective, thinking of it from a revenue cycle lens, it's really around charge testing and claims testing, and then validating work queues. So charge testing, the manner in which looking at every aspect of how a charge is triggered, whether it's based on orderable, performable, dispensing, resulting, having that key list of triggers in your new system as to what's going to facilitate your system to drop the charge. Testing all of those mechanisms. Absolutely critical. And then the second key swim lane, if I was only going to pick two of them that are the most important from a testing perspective, be claims testing. Oftentimes when organizations convert from system A to system B, they change claim scrubbers. And even if they don't change claim scrubbers, it's important because you're getting data out of system B when you used to get it out of system A. And those converters where you're taking your raw data of an itemized bill and converting it to an 837 readable format before you transmit it to the payer, it's making sure all is aligned and making sure that you're testing your claims so that on go live date, you have the ability to transmit claims that are going to be accepted by a payer, and you're still going to get paid for services rendered. One of the big errors or big mistakes or big challenges that organizations have post go live is their inability to drop charges and their inability to transmit claims, which then leads to a decrease in cash.
How should hospitals approach revenue mapping?
Well, revenue mapping in and of itself is an isolated project within the project, and it really starts with a clean crosswalk. Knowing how you map your revenue today from department A into this GL code, and that the charges in this outpatient service area goes to this GL charge code. And over time, the finance team knows this very well. It's critically important where you take your crosswalk and then validate it to system B. So you're really knowledgeable on system A, and then making sure you do a very detailed crosswalk from your system A revenue mapping to GL all the way to system B revenue mapping to GL.
Good advice. So you talked a little bit about testing claims pre-live. Do you have any specifics around that you would recommend or best practices?
Sure. From a best practice perspective, it's about parallel testing. So making sure that even if you're, so in scenario one, where you're converting from system A to system B, and you're not changing claim scrubbers, it's validating that the output from system B absolutely is a mirror image of system A as you import it into your claim scrubber under scenario A, that you're not changing claim scrubbers. Now under scenario B, which is far more complex, is not only during a system conversion are you also changing your claim scrubber. That's when you really have to have proper due diligence for parallel testing, where you're going to drop a set of test claims from your legacy EMR into your legacy claim scrubber, and then do the same out of the net new EMR system B into your new claim scrubber. And then that way you can test to validate that your new system is going to drop identically to your legacy systems. So extensive parallel testing, and again, testing for all payers under as many scenarios as you can, and not just testing a handful of claims, but testing everything to your commercials, everything to obviously Medicare, Medicaid, TPLs, work comps, things of that nature that get you a broad brush over the 80-20 rule from a claims transmission perspective.
That's good advice. You mentioned if you're changing claim scrubbers, not changing claim scrubbers, anything there that folks need to consider when they're evaluating making a system change? Seems like that might be the time to evaluate if you're going to make that change.
Absolutely. So my advice would be to, if you are going to change claim scrubbers while you're doing a system conversion, change that claim scrubber before your system conversion go live. That way you're not doing two system go lives at the same time.
Yeah.
Claims are critically important. Take care of that system conversion from claim scrubber 1 to claim scrubber 2 a minimum of 3 months prior to your system EMR system conversion go live. That way you can work out the bumps out of that claim scrubber, the new claim scrubber, with your billing edits, bridge routines, and everything else associated with transmitting claims in a successful way. Then you're not having to deal with two system go lives at the same time.
That's really good advice. I feel like inclination might be, if I'm changing one thing, let's just do it all at the same time. So that's really good advice. That's definitely not the way you should do it. So any recommendations on how hospitals should test charges?
Yes, again, getting back to the 80-20 rule, where if you can't drop charges or charges drop with errors, they're not going to make it to the claim to even be transmitted. So mission critical process, just like with claims testing, looking at what makes up 80% and at a bare minimum, what makes up 80% of your revenue. Identifying all of those charges, all of the mechanisms in which they charge, to drop 100% of those that make up 80%. In the perfect world, you're testing 100% of line items in your CDM. You're testing every single line within the CDM and confirming all mechanisms that that charge can drop, because certain charges can drop in different manners based on the site of service, based on the facility or the clinic and what have you. So looking at it to make integrated case studies. For example, have a case study where the patient initially presents to the emergency department and there's services provided in the ED. Then the patient goes to imaging to get an MRI. And then for whatever reason, the patient then rolls to an observation status. The patient then has a degradation in their outcomes. They have to get rushed to the OR. They then go to an inpatient status. They have a surgery event, and they end up getting discharged 5 days later. Go through the realistic scenarios of what I just mapped out in many cases to then trigger those charges across the continuum of the healthcare spectrum so that you're dropping charges as care is provided. In addition to that, do vanilla ED visits where someone comes in, they're a simple level 1, level 2, they come in, they're cared, they're discharged, and they move on. Same thing with all your outpatient services, depending upon what services you offer in your outpatient setting. Maybe they're coming in for a simple lab test following a clinic visit. Maybe they're coming in for a same-day surgery. Maybe they're coming in for an endoscopy. Maybe they're coming in as a direct admit from a nursing home. Look at the scenarios that make up 80% of your revenue, create those scenarios and test them within the system.
Really, really good suggestions there. So I've made it post live. What do I do now? What steps do I need to take to validate? And then we know everything's not going to be right the first time. So how do I optimize?
I would say first and foremost at go live, having a SWAT team for your revenue cycle. Very critical that you have a dedicated team that's doing nothing else but validating on a daily basis that charges are dropping, your revenue is mapping, your claims are able to get out the door. This SWAT team of revenue cycle SMEs then are deployed to address those issues in the moment, to diagnose the issue and then fix the root cause of the problem. Making sure you're mapping revenue on a daily basis. Map it back to the same period the prior year to make sure that on a charge per widget basis, you're aligning to your previous business model. Making sure that everything's dropping in that proper manner, looking at all of your charge work queues to make sure things are getting cleared out, addressing any errors, and solving for things in the moment. That alone in your first 14 to 28 days, so the first 2 to 4 weeks post go live, are the most critical times for facilities when they convert from system A to system B. The other key piece is, I would say, leverage a charge capture technology. Let technology do the work for you so that it's scrubbing your activity on a daily basis so you can work by exception. If there's many options out there today, and there's a lot of really sophisticated systems that import your itemized bill, import your 837, map your itemized bill to 837, and then tell you if there's charges missing. Right. So really leverage the technology today to be able to work by exception, and that way your teams aren't working 24/7 for 2 to 4 weeks post go live.
Right. Well, Jason, thank you. This was great. That's all the questions I've got. Any last minute words of wisdom, words of advice you want to leave folks with?
I would say don't approach it from a budget perspective. Overcompensate for the laborious process that your teams have to undertake. Make sure you have dedicated resources to your revenue cycle so that you don't have to spend 5 times the amount 3 months post go live because you haven't dropped a claim for 60 days and your cash dries up and you're having to tap into your line of credit, and that just creates bigger issues.
Right. Oh, yeah. Very, very good advice. Jason, thank you so much. Lots of really, really good information to make system changes, hopefully a little less painful. So
thank you very much. You all have a great afternoon.